There we go. Hey,
Wonderful. Firstly, I just want to hi, Dylan. I firstly just want to say a massive sorry to everybody who's jumped on live and jumped on an hour earlier because we firstly mixed up the time zones. And then once I got on live on my phone, it's the first time I've actually tried to do an interview or bring another person into a Facebook Live. And I realized once I was on that I couldn't do that. So we've had to quickly shift it and change it over to Zoom. So anybody who's looking for the live, I'm so sorry about that. If you find the Zoom link, that's great. If not, we will be posting this later. And I probably don't need to tell you that because if you're watching this, you will have realized that we will have posted it later. So if anyone comes on, welcome. Thank you for working with us to navigate the technical difficulties of working with Facebook Live. But Zoom's also amazing because we can have a really interactive conversation as more people come on as well. So there's something really cool about Zoom. So yeah, anyone who comes on, thank you. And anyone who's watching this in the future, hello, welcome to Psychedelic Sundays. My name is Holly Clark. I am one of the co-creators and one of the visionaries behind the birth and creation of Earth Pulse Collective, which is an amazing project that's close to many people's hearts now. Not just the people involved, but I think this is a project that a lot of people are feeling to create something similar to what we're doing, which is really the bringing together of multiple different healing modalities to help people really clean themselves from the inside out, to elevate their consciousness, to help them go on a journey of self-discovery and gain tools and methods and techniques to liberate themselves from suffering and from kind of the constructs and the confines of our limited society. So I'm really excited about today. We're dedicating Sundays to talking about all things psychedelic and plant medicine because a lot of people are feeling the calling to work with a lot of these ancient medicines. We've got a lot of Westerners traveling all over the world now, seeking out different ceremonies, different medicines to work with, different experiences so that they can continue on their journey of self-discovery. So we have a really, really special human, somebody very deeply within my own heart. I met this beautiful soul on the streets of Guatemala a little while back out the front of Keith's cacao porch. And if any of you don't know Keith is the chocolate shaman who lives in Guatemala. Dylan's there drinking his cacao from Keith, and we met in a ceremony with Keith, which is a cacao ceremony, who's a very unorthodox, brilliant, in my opinion, guide or facilitator or shaman. He's known as the chocolate shaman, and that's where I met Dylan. So Dylan and I have been on a small journey together. I'm not going to do a lot of talking after this. I'm really going to hand the platform over to him today, but I am really, really excited to introduce you all to him. He has an interest in different medicines than I do, and he has a lot more knowledge and understanding, and has had a really interesting journey, specifically, almost especially with psilocybin mushrooms and cacao, I believe. So in passing it over to you, Dylan, the first question I wanted to ask is, how did you end up on Keith's cacao porch? What were the series of events that led you to be in Guatemala working with cacao and interested in the medicines and what really brought you to Guatemala, to this kind of strange alternate way of healing? And if you could just share a little bit about yourself as well, of course.
Sure. Yeah. So I've been traveling around the world now for the last 9 years. And in the beginning, it was really just following a call of my heart into the unknown and just kind of surrendering my life over to this deep down feeling that there had to be something more in my life that was available out there in the world than what I knew. And so it was really just a place of curiosity in the beginning. And over many, many years of traveling, and I met many different teachers, and basically just by continuously surrendering my life over to this inner compass, this inner guidance system, I started to meet the right people and the right teachers and healers and this, that, and the other, and I just let it take me over the course of many, many years. And eventually it dropped me in Lake Atitlán, Guatemala, which is an incredible, beautiful, sacred place, filled with teachers, filled with people seeking. It's considered one of the vortex spots on the earth. And yeah, I mean, I came to the lake 3 times before I had any interest in going to see Keith whatsoever. I actually specifically did not have an interest in seeing Keith. It was one of those, like, there's so many different teachers and pockets here, and people, I call it like a Hogwarts sorting hat. The lake puts you where you're meant to go, and there's Taoist monks, and there's shamanic people, and then there's Keith doing this weird cacao ceremony things. I don't even know what to call it, and all these different little places. And the first couple times I came down here, I'd heard of Keith, and I don't know why, it was like, I don't want to go. And in hindsight, I guess I just wasn't, ready to be there. And the first time that I actually met Keith at a dinner party, and him and I got in this crazy conversation about quantum physics and this and that, and immediately was like, I love this guy. I mean, he looks like a wizard, he has this huge long beard. He looks like Gandalf the wizard, and he plays with chocolate. So people say he's half Gandalf, half Willy Wonka. It's like, if you put the two together, you get Keith. And he's a wizard who plays with chocolate. And the first time I went to his porch, it was actually the very first time in my 9 years of travel that I felt home, where I truly felt like I was with my community, with people who, were on the same evolution that I was on. And I had found my teacher, and I immediately dropped everything and spent years studying with Keith, and that was it.
I really, really love that description. I love that we're talking about Keith. I wasn't actually expecting that we'd go straight into talking about Keith, but it does make a lot of sense to me. Just going back for a minute, you say that it was the first time that you felt like it was home. I've had these experiences myself, but I'm really, because I've heard this story before and it's so brilliant, I would love to just ask you to share a little bit about your childhood and how you kind of had that relentless feeling of not being at home and not really fitting into the mainstream, and just talking a little bit about that childhood that you were brought up in and how that really seemed to motivate you to search for something more than that. Are you happy to share a bit about that?
I'm happy to share with whatever the heck you'd like. I'm here and I'm in. Yeah, I mean, the simplest way that I could put it, which I think a lot of people can relate to, was that I grew up in a place where the programming, the cultural conditioning was pushed on me very, very hard. And for whatever the heck the reason, no matter how hard my parents or culture or school or religion attempted to make me fit that box, the programming never stuck, it never took. And because of that, I lived a very challenging life. I asked questions I wasn't supposed to ask, and I was always looking at things that didn't make sense. And I very quickly realized that the answers I was getting, whether or not it was from my beautiful, loving parents or school or just religion a lot as well. I grew up in Southern California in Orange County, and it's a very, in my opinion, cookie cutter, superficial, out of the box kind of consensus reality little bubble. And no one could answer the questions that I had. A lot of times it was, even at a young age, I realized that I was being lied to in some way, shape, or form, that I wasn't being told the whole truth. And because of the programming, because what it takes for an individual to squash down their greatness and their creativity and our natural artistic expression, in order to be able to fit that particular mold, you can't tell the truth. You can't tell the truth primarily to yourself. And so as a young child who's not supposed to know, adult things anyways, I definitely couldn't have been told the truth. But I was, able to see through that a little bit. And so I got a lot of half answers. And that kind of led to this feeling of, well, then I can't ask. So I can't ask my friends. I can't ask the adults. I can't ask the culture. I guess I'll keep it all inside. And I spent, the majority of my childhood in deep observation and internal struggles and challenges and, all the things that children go through. But a lot of it was a lot of just deep observation and not wondering why we were living the way that we were living. By the time I was 18, this had kind of hit a point. I had graduated high school and I was supposed to be going to college and doing kind of the mainstream thing, same thing that my father did, basically. I was going to follow in his footsteps. And the short of it was I basically hit this moment where I fell into a deep, deep depression, which, as Jim Carrey says, depression, you should think of it as deep rest. My being was taking a deep rest from the character that I was pretending to play. And, nothing that had made me happy, drinking and hanging out with friends, my girlfriend, and all the things that I used to enjoy suddenly just weren't working anymore. And I went into this deep, dark hole within myself. And in that place, I basically came to this conclusion that one of two things were either going to have to happen. Either I was going to have to uproot myself and throw myself into the unknown. And my family never traveled, and I knew nothing about travel. I knew nothing about spirituality. So it was either I was going to completely throw myself into whatever the heck was going on inside my heart or my soul, or I was going to have to let go of my heart and soul and let my spirit completely squish down in order to keep showing up at the day-to-day job and, doing everything that the world around me was doing. And just like I saw the people around me, underneath that mask, there's a lot of pain there, and there's a lot of desire for something greater, and a lot of what I call the slow death of the human spirit, which is the greatest sickness, in my opinion, facing the modern world. It is the slow death of the human spirit. In order to, show up at your same day-to-day job 5 days a week and go to church on Sundays and, do all the things that we're supposed to do, and it's not working anymore. And so the only way it works is you have to let go of who you actually are. And I refused. And so I decided not to go to college, decided not to go to school. I broke up with my girlfriend. I told my friends and family that I was leaving. They all thought I completely lost my mind. That's a whole other story in and of itself, how I did that. But basically I left to go travel with a backpack and a few $100s. And I knew the only real thing that I knew, I didn't have spirituality back then for me. All I really knew was that it was something deep down inside of me that had pulled me out of that prison and into the unknown. And so I figured, well, I'll just surrender my life over to that thing that pulled me. And so every major decision, I would do the best of my ability to let my heart guide me, no matter how irrational it seemed. And that still has been my commitment, and it's my lifelong curiosity of what happens to an individual when you just let this deeper thing guide you through all the way, at least the best that I can. And, almost 10 years later, here we are.
I so deeply resonate to so much of that. And that moment, that crunch point in your life where, I just can't keep going down that mainstream pathway, that cookie cutter society, because it's a slow death of my spirit inside, even if the external looks okay, because that death of the spirit becomes so suffocating, and that internal feeling of depression or longing is so deep that it almost pulls you into the unknown. The unknown at some point becomes less painful or scary than staying in that mainstream ideology of what we should be doing. So I super resonate with you. It's probably why we get along. We're such curious explorers of life. So that spirit has obviously pulled you into a journey at some point with psychedelics. It was obviously calling you to, certain different medicines and methods. So specifically, I would love to hear how you found your way to the plant teachers that have become probably your greatest allies, or the ones you like working with the most. What was that process, and what medicines did you end up with?
Well, one of the things that I always bring up when we're talking about working with plant medicine is that in every medicine journey, there are two major components. One is the medicine itself, and one is you. Who you are, what you know, what you don't know, and how you show up to the experience dramatically affects the experience itself. Because until the plant is consumed, it's just a plant. Powerful, lots of respect, lots of magic. It's amazing, but it needs the human consciousness. That's when things get interesting. Until then, what's a mushroom doing? It's just sitting there waiting, or the cacao plant's just sitting there waiting, and it has this way of kind of guiding us to help us find it, or we guide ourselves there. But it's the fusion between the human consciousness and our five senses and everything that we are in our culture and our history and our background and our challenges that create the medicine experience itself, right? And so because of that, as we continue to grow and evolve as individuals, what is possible for us in our medicine journeys continue to unfold and expand. And after, really 10 years, it's been with me all along. I took my first dose of mushrooms when I was 15, but especially in the last 5 years when I've been, a lot more intensively studying and doing my inner work, being assisted by these plants, it's very, very obvious that the internal universe that we get access to seems limitless. I mean, I've done a lot of exploring, and it just goes on and on and on. And it, meets us halfway. So if you're, a total newbie, like, to bring it back around to your question, when I was 15 and I very first started taking these plants, it's almost as if the medicine kind of surveys you and says, okay, here's a 15-year-old in the forest taking mushrooms. Let's hide all the really, really good stuff and just meet them where they're at, kind of a thing. So they've been with me for a very long time, but as I evolved and my relationship with the psilocybin and the cacao eventually grew, the depth of my experience grew as well. And it's a beautiful process because it helps remind us that we are just as important and just as worthy as the medicine. And we need to step forth into our co-creative potential to show up powerfully, to show up as the gods and goddesses that we are with respect, but understand that it's the co-creation is where all the magic happens. And I first kind of discovered this myself actually was when I took a break working with the plant medicine. So about 4 years ago, I synchronistically met a man who became one of my mentors. He's one of the top functional neurologists in the United States. His name's Dr. Karen Kuykendall, based out of Austin, Texas. When I met him, he had seen 40,000 patients, and he was ready to basically close his medical practice and go on his own heart-led journey around the world. When he did that, he invited me to be his first apprentice. And at that time, I was a street musician, you know, hippie, whatever. And suddenly I'm being apprenticed by one of the top doctors in the United States. You can't make this up. This is what happens when you follow that compass. I mean, you know, people are like, how did that happen? I was like, I'd have to go back to that first decision when I was 18. You know what I mean? Because every single step along the way put me there. And him following his heart actually is what put him in the spot where we both met. And so when I was traveling with him, he had this huge, extensive background in shamanic practices, alternative medicines, chiropractic, functional neurology. I mean, it was huge. And a ton of personal development, you know, consciousness, magic, different types of tools to help people heal from the inside out. And one of the things that he basically told me in the beginning was, I want to know that you can do everything you need to do inside yourself, all of your healing, all of your transformation, without the assistance of any plant medicine. So we put that aside, and he basically said, well, we study together. It needs to be purely, sorry, I'm just going to make sure everyone's muted here. There we go. Oh, except not you, Holly. We'll keep you. It needs to be a sober endeavor. And so what ended up happening is him and I would spend about 2 hours a day blindfolded and meditating, learning how to navigate our consciousness from the inside out. And it was a meditation, but it was very active. It was just learning how to explore the human consciousness, applying all the tools he had, applying everything I learned from Keith here in Guatemala, mixing it, blending it, and what I call swapping files. So we both come out of a meditation and I go, I did it this way today. And I'd hand him the file and he'd go, huh, that's interesting. I'm going to go in tomorrow and try it that way, but add a few things. And then he would go inside and twist a few things and then pass it back to me. And we literally did this for, I don't know, a few years. 2 hours a day, back and forth, dropping 90% of what he had learned, 90% of what I had learned, distilling down 10% of what we loved, and then using our imagination to continuously amplify the effectiveness of what we were working on. All of this was done sober. And when that kind of apprenticeship finally ended, he's still my best friend, we talk all the time, but I finally decided to go back to working with psilocybin. When I did that, I immediately realized, holy crap, everything I've been training myself to know how to do in my consciousness over the last few years completely applies in my medicine journey. And so instantaneously, I had access to going to places and doing things inside myself to a level that was so much higher than what I had ever been able to reach before. And it was because I had spent a few years radically changing one of those major two components, which was myself. And the medicine met me there. And I had the skills and the confidence to navigate my own journeys from the inside out. And yeah, that's basically what helped me just realize the importance of doing this inner work and learning how to navigate the experience, not just hope that that particular medicine fixes us, or hope that we get what we want out of that ceremony, or hope that the thing over there does something to us, but actually doing our inner work even when we're sober to be able to show up and meet the medicine as powerfully as we possibly can.
This is amazing, and it is so in alignment with, again, a lot of what I've been pondering and thinking and feeling and being taught from the medicines myself. It actually opens up a couple of questions that I want to ask. So the first thing is, and I feel this too, and I really agree that I believe that the medicine is meeting us where our consciousness is. And so we're all having different experiences often, and we can also have different experiences ourselves as we continue doing our inner work. I can attest to that deeply. So what do you feel when people talk about the spirit of a medicine? And you know, with ayahuasca, we have the spirit of the mother, we have with Shuma, or we've got peyote, people talk about the spirit of the grandfather. what do you think is there a spirit to medicines? Is there a spirit to psilocybin that differs from the spirit to ayahuasca or to wachuma? And the other part of this question is, some of the experiences I've had with mushrooms is that once that door is open, you can almost access multiple different spirits, if you will. I feel like the spirit of ayahuasca has very much been in some of my medicine journeys. And there does become this point where I can't really myself distinguish between the different medicines sometimes as I've continued on my evolution. So what do you think, this idea of the spirit, is there a spirit of the medicine? Is that outside of us? And does that differ from medicine to medicine to medicine?
Ooh, good question. Uh, Absolutely, there's a spirit to the medicines. Um, and that's my personal opinion. But I'll also just say as a precursor that it's incredibly important that we start reclaiming the power of our own direct experience. Because for a very long time, we've had this idea that someone else or something else knows better than us. Whether or not that's the school system or the government or the religion or the priest or something, we need something else in between us and our direct experience with life and our direct experience with, the divine, the universe, God, whatever you want to call it. We need something in between us and it. And it's about time that we reclaim the power of our own direct experience. All I know is that in my subjective reality, absolutely there seems to be a overarching spirit to these different medicines, and they have different personalities and different things. And also, just like I like to imagine, like different lovers, they make different requests of you. Meaning, when I talk about showing up as a worthy co-creator to working with these medicines, because there's so much of this idea of just surrender, right? Like just completely let go and just surrender. And that makes perfect sense that that is a step, especially for us in the Western world, where we're so addicted to, being locked in that rational mind and trying to control everything. Of course, one of the massive major lessons is to learn how to surrender. But when we talk about that, that's the only thing that's there for us. I think that's a drastic oversimplification. It sounds nice. It's a good piece of advice to hand someone, but it's not the whole picture. After you understand how to surrender enough, then there comes a point where now it's time to lean in and co-create. And I have so many examples we can get into and the importance of that. But the way I like to think about it is kind of a funny way to think about it. Is like, imagine that the medicine was like your lover. And all you ever do is lay there like a dead fish and surrender. It's only so fun for so long before it's like, now, can you do something? The medicine's like, I'm here. Can you show up to this a little bit? Like, come on, right? So we need to put a little bit of ourselves into the journey. And with practice, you learn just like making love or just like dancing with someone. When is the medicine asking me to lay back and surrender? When is it presenting me with something that I'm now going to lean in and co-create, ask a question, look at this, work with this, heal this, so that we can co-create the next step in this journey and, bounce back and forth, lean in, lean out. And the different medicines have, just like different partners, different requests and different desires. One of the things I love working with psilocybin is that it's what I call the people's medicine. Psilocybin has been being used, depending on who you're talking to, for 10,000 years, maybe longer for the human species, and it shows up on every single continent. They say mushrooms have been used in over 100 different cultures. So it's not culturally bound in the way that I would say ayahuasca is, which isn't a bad thing. It's just different. Ayahuasca is so much rooted in the jungle, and that's amazing. But she has a tendency to bring you into her world a little bit. Whereas in my experience, the mushrooms are a lot more interested in your world. And it's like, I've been working with the human species since forever, and I'm all over the planet, every culture I'm interacting with. So it's a lot more open in the sense that psilocybin tends to show up and be like, what are you about? What do you want to do? And, so that's my piece on that. In regards to the other question about the other spirits or beings or whatever the heck you want to call it that we might encounter in these plant medicine journeys, I have different opinions on it, and it's changing all the time. That's part of the point of being a consciousness exploring, someone who's curious, is it's like my ideas are changing all the time. I'm patchworking it together. I used to be very, very clear on the idea that the beings and things that I would encounter, which I've encountered many, many times, were somewhere outside of myself. Whether or not that was a nature spirit, somewhere from the earth, somewhere from another planet, is coming from somewhere else. Now I hold kind of somehow a contradiction or a paradox where I feel it's both. Somehow it's myself, it's me, and it's other beings at the same time. Sometimes it's myself in the future, very clearly coming back in time to work on me. That's happened many, many times, and it feels very obvious. I'll hear my own voice in the future being like, yeah, I'm here to help you out in this moment. The general feeling about it, though, is that we as human beings are access channels. Our energy body goes far beyond our physical bodies, and there's so much that we can do with that we in the Western world, for some reason, literally just cut that part out of ourselves. I like to think about it like the mind, the body, and the spirit, and they all pull on each other. If your mind is falling down, your body's going to fall apart. If you raise your body up, your mind will elevate to a higher level. And then we have this third piece called the human spirit, and we've just forgotten about it. We pushed it away. And imagine the impact it's having on the mind and the body if they are all intertwined, if we literally just sever one off and throw it away. Obviously, we're going to have a sickness in the mind, and we're going to have a sickness in the body. But it seems that with that energetic, spiritual, whatever you want to call it, aspect of ourselves, we have kind of like a radio dial that we can dial in. And, Keith calls it the cosmic telephone. Who do you want to call? And the plant medicine makes it very, very easy to make those cosmic phone calls to your guides, to your ancestors, to the spirits, to other human beings across the planet. I mean, there's so much that we can do that we're just now even making it okay to talk about. But all that the plant is doing is giving you access into who you actually are. You are the access channel. You have that ability. You don't need the plant medicine to do it, but it's an incredible facility. It's a lubricant that makes it much, much easier, especially when you're pulling out a piece of technology that has been, dusty in the closet of your consciousness because you haven't used it your entire life. You might need a jump start, and those plants are that jump start. It makes it easier to get access into who you actually are. But especially working with the psilocybin, it's very, very obvious, and the cacao spirit, that they're always reminding me of what I am capable of, what the human being is. It's not the plant. The plant is a facilitator. If you imagine that it's that cosmic telephone, I imagine the psilocybin's like your operator. And, you pick up the phone, you're like, and the mushrooms go, who do you want to call? It's like, I don't know, aliens? It's like, cool, let me patch you in. And boom, now you're there, but it's you. It's always you.
I've thought about a lot of this myself, but to hear it put in different ways is just such a joy. I'm really loving this. I completely, again, I'm going to just keep saying I agree, because I know that we do actually have a lot in common in the way we think about things, but I also feel like a lot of what we're tapping into in all of these different states of consciousness is just ourself. And we're using all these different layers of awareness or consciousness to create, these different entities or beings within our consciousness to try and remind ourselves about ourselves in a way. So it's much vaster, and we're not always doing this at the conscious level. But a lot of these spirits or these experiences or these relationships that we're seemingly having with beings that are out there, or consciousnesses that are out there, or even consciousness that is in the future, is actually all just different levels of awareness happening right now. And the medicines seem to be able to give us, as you said, they're like this lubricant or this insight into the fact that we can access those states of beings of ourself right now if we choose. And I was just listening to Bashar talk yesterday about time travel, and he was saying time travel, it doesn't really exist because everything exists right now. But when you, in your own linear understanding, feel like something's in the future, that's okay. But often what it is just a possibility that you're being shown right now that you could choose to step into now if you wanted. But because we're still in this 3D, it seems to, it makes more sense to us to be like, that's a future possibility. But really, it is a now possibility. And I feel like a lot of the medicine journeys show us very quickly in a powerful way, actually, you have access to a complete another reality, another way of being, another way of thinking, another way of feeling, another way of seeing things right now if you wish. Just to kind of, harper on about what you're saying and to parrot that. Probably the next question that I would have here is, if the medicine's deepest truth to us is that you don't need medicine, you don't need anything outside of you to access these states of being, when do you think, or how would you navigate the question, when is enough enough, for using a medicine that's outside of you, or using a tool? When do you think you would be able to say, I know now that I don't need that external thing, the plant or the tool, because I can find it now within without using that? Do you have any ideas or opinions on this?
Yeah, that's a great question. First and foremost, it's 110% up to the individual and the relationship that they have with the plant. And again, that's part of our empowerment. Throw out your rule book that says it should be done this way or that way. And, working with the cacao as well for over the last 4 years now, at least with Keith and my teacher, there's a lot of opinion that the cacao spirit is, again, curious about your fun, your approach. And when I offer, for example, a cacao ceremony, I'm very clear on what it is. It is myself and the cacao coming together to create an experience for other human beings. And I hope it's beneficial when they do, and it seems to be. But that's our fusion, and that's our creation. Someone else would have their cacao ceremony, or your journey, my journey. They're all going to be completely different. 110% unique to the individual, as is the relationships we build, and the amount of medicine that's right for you and when to stop and all that kinds of things. It's something for each of us to discern within ourselves, and also to be willing to get a little bit messy and make mistakes and be okay with it. I don't feel that there's a slight distinction there, because we talk about, the medicine helps us remind us of who we are. That's fantastic. And there's, ways that we then bring that back into our daily experience. And this is also one of the reasons why, counter to most pharmaceuticals, for example, or most other drugs with psychedelics, the more that you work with them, the less that you need, as opposed to needing more. Because it's not that you're building a tolerance to that medicine. It's that you're actually becoming more and more sensitive, more open, more healed, more vibrant, more alive. You have more access to who you are, the more that we continue to heal and grow, however you do it. And so you need less medicine to go to that place within yourself. And at this point, I work with relatively, most people would consider very low doses. But it doesn't matter, because I only need a little bit to help me get back in touch with my own access channel. So the dosages have been going down for me, not up. And that's an important distinction, as well as understanding that just because they remind us of who we are and are what's possible for us, doesn't necessarily mean that the end goal is to no longer use them. It just simply means we're helping you unlock your own potential from the inside out. Part of that potential is connecting to and having relationships with plants and plant medicine and all different types of alive, other reflections of consciousness, animal, nature, insect, who cares, that exist on this planet. And at least in my opinion, as Terence McKenna would talk about, if you're an evolving ape species on a tiny planet on the fringes of the Milky Way, why should you understand the secrets of the universe completely on your own? Why should you not have to humble yourself enough to cut a deal with a plant and just go, hey, if I'm going to make it through this thing, you and I are going to need to work together? And I think it's a beautiful thing. I think the approach of we should be totally sober and only do it on our own, and the hard way, the hard bus, at least for me, isn't the road.
I was just not testing, but I was just interested in your opinion, because I think that having this idea that there is an end goal to anything is a real hindrance in our whole evolution, because there is no ending to it. And so that's been my experience too. And I wouldn't even say that my end goal is to stop using medicines sometimes. It's more to be present to knowing what feels right and aligned right now, and to not knowing what tomorrow is going to be, and to not knowing what the next day is going to be. And maybe you will work with medicines and maybe you won't. Maybe you feel like one day you need to take a big dose, maybe the next day a very small dose, maybe not for 4 years, but really tuning into your guidance system, that very individual guidance system that is guiding you each step of the way with that, that open-minded curiosity, and not having this distinct, like, the goal is to get somewhere, because that seems to be a rabbit hole that, or once that, like a rat wheel that goes to nowhere land, of this idea of it needs to end somewhere, it needs to get somewhere, it needs to be some particular way, which a lot of the time just creates a lot of suffering for us as human beings, rather than being, I am here, I am now, and the only thing that I know right now is what's here and now and what feels aligned to me. So, in saying that, talking about dosages, there is an idea out there with psilocybin, for instance, that a microdose does this, and a 1 gram does this, and a 5 gram does this, and you've got all these different dosages. But again, I feel I've seen, or actually, rather, I've personally experienced having some of the most powerful experiences on very light doses, and sometimes on the higher dose, it wasn't as strong. So how do we navigate dosage personally, as that more of a kind of personal experience, rather than looking up on a website and being like, here is the recommended dose that you should have for XYZ experience? Because in my experience, that's not always, that doesn't always apply to everybody.
Right. And with that, actually, I just want to touch on one last thing, but I think the two questions just go together. There is also a huge difference between working with a plant medicine or doing any spiritual practice, anything you're doing, from a place of need or lack, or I'm really trying to heal, I'm really trying to change my life, or something. And that's a beautiful thing. There's nothing wrong with that. That's an important part of the journey. But there's a difference between reaching out to this support for that reason and wanting to alter our experience because we're unhappy with our experience. And then just arriving to a place where you go, I'm completely happy and fulfilled and content with my daily life, and it's great. And I'm going to step into the medicine as a space of passion and curiosity and playfulness. And that's how it is for me now. Like, sometimes for sure there's that deep feeling of like, I'm really struggling and I need to go inside myself. I'm going to use some plant medicine to help me do that. But more often than not, I check in with myself and I go, what is the thing that's pulling me towards the medicine in the first place? Is it lack? Is it I'm bored? Is it, something like that? And more often than not, it's like, no, it's just a space of total passion and curiosity for what the heck is out there and getting into it. It's just my favorite thing. It's an artistic endeavor. Nothing needs to change. It's just curiosity. And of course, because it relates to my work, I'm always pushing the edge to find more tools and discover more things. And it's total passion. It's total exploration. And that's very different. Go ahead.
Oh no, I was thinking of a conversation that I had with someone the other day, and they were deciding or not whether they wanted to sit with ayahuasca, and they said, I just don't feel like I want to be healed anymore. I'm just sick of thinking that I need to be healed. So I don't understand my motivation for wanting to go and sit in the ceremony, because I'm so sick of healing myself. I'm fine, I'm good, I'm happy. And we had that conversation. And I said, well, how about you go in with a completely different, you don't have to, but a completely different perspective where it's actually not necessary maybe for you to be healed. If you realize that you don't need healing, what about going in exactly as you're saying, with that place of curiosity? What about asking a question of, how could I serve more? How could I be more myself? What is there out there? So there is a completely different perspective, or I guess intention, of going in from a place of exploration and curiosity, as opposed to that idea of healing. And I definitely have felt the difference in the journeys when you're going in from different intentions. And there was a time in my journeying with medicine that I was like, wait, there's no more healing that needs to be happening. But it didn't mean it was the end. It just became exciting after that. It was more like an excitement of what else are we, because we're so big and we're so, we're huge. I kind of cut you off on the question, talking about how you navigate.
I cut myself off. And I'm gonna keep Can I deviate one more time and then come back around?
Yes, and I just want to put this in here because you might deviate into it. I'd also like to know your ideas about what a ceremony would look like, because there's not necessarily such a traditional idea of ceremony, and a lot of people do work with mushrooms more recreationally or because they're bored, or some are using them in a ceremonial way. So also just talking a little bit about what your idea of a ceremony with mushrooms or with cacao looks like.
All right, fine. Okay, good. I'll come back to dosage before I start. Woo! I love this. It's so much fun. Okay. Dosage. Experiment. Start slow if you need to start slow, and then, do what you need to do. But it's again, the better you are at navigating your journey and your consciousness from the inside out, the less medicine you're probably going to need. Or at least to say, the more possibilities open up, the more healing that's possible, and the more beneficial the medicine will be for you. So the analogy I like to use is, imagine that your consciousness is like a rocket ship, and the plant medicine's like rocket fuel. If you ingest the rocket fuel, the rocket ship of your consciousness begins to lift off the ground. And if you're on the inside and you have no idea how to work the controls of your own consciousness, then it's kind of like being a space monkey being blasted off into space. And you surrender, let go, and freaking, hold on for dear life and hope for the best. Now, it's completely different if you're a trained astronaut, a navigator of your own consciousness, and you're sitting in your consciousness, ingesting rocket fuel and ready to start to work the controls of your own ship. That's the co-creation. That's the important piece. And if you understand how to navigate your rocket ship, then you don't need that much rocket fuel to try to get where you're going. And I've had so many experiences. People ask me all the time. I mean, I created a whole training program around this subject specifically, which I'll share about probably more at the end. But so many times where people are like, how did you have 1 gram of mushrooms or 2 grams of mushrooms? And you had that experience, that journey. I had a ceremony up here at the temple not that long ago where I was working with a client, and I typically ingest the same dosage that the client takes. I like to go in there with them. And we were sitting next to each other, meditating in silence, in a space, playing music, right next to each other, doing the exact same thing, taking the exact same medicine, sitting right next to each other. And I was just sitting there holding space silently. And then after about 2 hours, I did a little check-in and said, where are you at? How's it going? What's going on with you? And he said, oh yeah, it's this, that, and the other, and it's nice, and it's nothing too crazy, and blah, blah, blah. We had taken a kind of light dose. And then he just said, so what's going on for you? And I just laughed, because it was like, I got a whole other, so much is happening over here. There's so much to share, but we've taken the exact same medicine. So just because 2 people, you take a certain dosage doesn't mean that you can open the door or specific doors within yourself. And then, then I got to show him and guide him a little bit and show him what you don't know that you don't know. Because the medicine space is such a vast space, and there's so much imagination. It's such an art, really. It's an art form of exploration, and you simply do not know what you don't know. And, that's what changed my life the first time my mentor came in and stepped into one of my journeys and started helping me try things out. It's like, how about you try this? How about you do that? Why don't you look at it this way? And showing me what is actually possible, because I would have never fucking thought of it. And the second that he showed me, I could do it, which is one of the most amazing things about this type of work, and meditation as well, is that the second someone tells you to try it, if you have the courage and the knowing that you can literally, I could say, Holly, why don't you close your eyes and just do this? And hand it to you, and you'll instantly be able to go there. And you go, oh, it's like that, And once you get it down good enough, you start to realize that you could do anything, any way that you want. And once that happens, a dimension of unlimited creative potential and freedom and healing and artistic expression opens up in someone that's just, it's a level of sovereignty and empowerment that is unparalleled in my experience. If you, just to say in terms of dosage, if you personally feel called, your intuition knows, but if you need a high dose to kick the door open because it's never been open, or you've wedged it shut, then great, take a super high dose and go from there. But sometimes with the really high doses, you're going to get a different teaching out of any dose. And sometimes in the higher doses, I feel it becomes really about just the surrender, because the dose becomes too high for you to get in there and do anything. And that's great. It's a different type of journey. But it seems to be more interesting to me and more effective and more healing and a bigger benefit to my life when I actually maintain some level of a tamed ego to be able to actually navigate some things and look at some stuff and ask some questions and all that stuff.
Yeah, you're speaking about a lot that's incredibly important. I think bringing awareness to the fact that doing your inner work outside of medicine journeys, which is your preparation and especially your integration work and what you do between your journeys, is incredibly, if not one of the most important parts. Because if you're just going into your medicine journeys without training your awareness, your consciousness from the inside out, you do end up in this experience where you're just completely been taken for that ride and you're still kind of all over the place in your life. It's something I've noticed, that people can take mushrooms, every weekend for 10 years of their life and still not have become a master of their emotions or a master of their internal compass or a master of their creative abilities, because it wasn't about having that co-creation dance or that commitment to their own evolution in the times between journeys. And I've seen a huge difference between people's transformation, between those people who don't really care what happens in between journeys and those people who are actively working on themselves, doing their meditation processes, sitting down, interested in their thoughts, actually having a commitment to where they let their mind go and doing that level of self-work. I think there's a lot of commitment and a lot to be said in there. When you choose to co-create in your evolution, you can really polish your ship and fly a lot faster into a space of creative expression or liberation or freedom. So that's a really important topic, and I'm super happy you're talking about that. Is there any other kind of preparation or integrative tools that you would suggest that people be working with in between working with medicines?
Hmm. I mean, all the standard rules apply for sure. If you're talking about preparation, then there's questions of diet and having a clean diet, and there's different ways to do that. People can look into it or whatever. Um, Diet and just your headspace and the space that you create is super important. Creating a sanctuary, it doesn't need to be in the middle of the jungle or anything. It can be, but it can also be in your home if you have a space that you feel safe and comfortable in. I'm a huge fan of doing blindfold work. I must have at least 100 hours of blindfolded mushroom journeys solo by myself. I mean, that's how I play. 9 times out of 10, that's how I'm playing, unless I'm hanging out with you. And but you take me on a crazy ride. It's going to be me and the medicine. It's my favorite way to work because it's the purest in the sense of there's no other music, there's no other people. It's gorgeous to have facilitators, but part of what we're talking about of gathering these tools and having our own ability to go inside and get the medicine we need, the healing we need when we need it, and become our own guide in a sense, frees up the confidence, the skill, the ability to say on a weekend in this sanctity of my own home by myself, I'm going to go in and transform my life right now, and it's going to be absolutely incredible, and integrate it and feel good about showing up to work on Monday ready and passionate for life. I mean, it's so needed, especially as psilocybin in particular moves across the board, and it isn't bound in that way culturally, and it doesn't necessarily require another facilitator to be there singing songs and do all these amazing things. But the mushrooms, especially, or MDMA, whatever it's going to be, to be able to just sit down in your home and go, this is what I'm ready for. This is what I need. And blindfold work for me really, really helps with that. The blindfold keeps the eyes closed. It says to the medicine, it's a permission slip. It says, I'm here to go inward now. I'm done taking medicine at the festival or the party or nature, and all those things are amazing, but this is about, let me explore my consciousness and my healing, my journey. So that stuff, having music available, all the simple things that we create in a space for ourselves are super, super beneficial. So that's preparation. On the integration side, I really like the idea of creative integration, which I've heard a lot about lately. So doing artistic things, whether or not that's dancing or drawing or journaling or painting or, I don't know, sculpture or a walk in nature or something like that, as a way to literally in your body do something. Or create it. I mean, you could say I could sit here and type out the story of what happened in my medicine journey. And if that's your way, that's beautiful. But the medicine is such a visual, artistic, creative space that bringing that into, something with color or something with movement or in your body, I think is a really beautiful thing. Also having someone to talk to, whether or not it's a friend or a coach or someone to have dialogue with, even if it's voice recorded audios, which is really helpful for me. I mean, almost every medicine journey, I'll have a moment the next day where I sit down with my phone and I turn on the audio recorder and I just talk for 40 minutes because I forgot like half of what happened yesterday, but the talking brings it all back and it just lets my rational mind chew on it for a minute. And that's always been really, really helpful. Also, it's good to have your phone because you can put in headphones. And if you're walking around talking to yourself, people won't think you're absolutely crazy. If your headphones are on, I do a lot of talking to myself where you think I'm talking to someone else. And they're probably sitting there going, man, whoever's on the other side of this phone is getting a mouthful right now. This guy will not shut up. But so whatever you got to do. One thing I'll say about integration, though, and again, it comes back to the theme of just the more that we learn how to navigate that consciousness, and that can include meditation, breath work, coaching. Like, oh my God, my skills as a coach to be able to ask powerful questions to myself is so valuable in the medicine because the medicine speaks to us in metaphors. And we have to start to unravel a little bit that metaphorical language. I'll give you a great example that explains this whole thing because there's so much popular talk right now about integration. And of course, as it should be. But again, we get caught on these little buzzwords a little bit. And this idea of integration. And, if someone tells me, I've been integrating this ceremony that I had for a year or 3 months or 6 months or whatever, my very first question is, what happened to you in that ceremony that's causing your being, your consciousness, to need to take that long to feel like you brought it back in your life fully? And what I can assume probably happened was that you took a medicine and you had an experience that went beyond what your consciousness was really able to hold. And now your consciousness is literally, you're playing catch up on, I went far beyond what I was ready to handle. And that can be a wonderful, healthy thing. But now, it takes a long time for the rest of your consciousness to just catch up. So the better you become at embracing and unlocking the metaphor and embracing your journey real time while you're there, the more you can handle it, the more it's integrated, what I call active integration. It's literally integrating as you're experiencing it. So afterwards, you don't need this giant lag time because you were able to embrace what happened when it happened. A PTSD or PSD? My brain just totally, yeah, thanks.
PTSD?
Yes. It's a similar type of experience in a way where you have an experience that's beyond the capacity of what you're able to hold emotionally. And so it goes into, lag time of I'm going to be trying to work through this for a long period of time, or it's stuck inside of me in a way where I can't heal it yet because I'm still not at a capacity to embrace what happened. So your consciousness is trying to catch up. So my very first thought about integration is, well, how are you navigating the actual content of your experience? Because preparation and integration are like bookends, and my fascination is what is going on actually in the content and what skills and tools do you have to navigate it?
Yeah, and I know this is one of the reasons we're so passionate about coming together and creating Earth Pulse as a project, because it brings everything into a container to be able to help that process be as fast and as efficient and as caring and as kind and as potent and as understood and as helpful as possible, rather than just being in the washing machine of trying to figure it all out over, years, months. I've definitely met some people who've had one journey and 5 years later, they're like, I still haven't figured out, what happened there. And I again agree where it's just lacking in understanding, lacking in some good tools, because it really could just be a day that person needs to sit with somebody who can guide them through what happened in their consciousness. And within 24 hours, this 5-year integration time could just be done. But that just comes down to having those tools, those methods, people who have, some roadmaps that you could potentially offer that person to navigate what happened in their experience. Interestingly, there's And I'm thinking about this a lot right now, looking at the evolution of our individual consciousness. But there are some times where, and I was having a very, very deep conversation about this yesterday, where each individual person within inside of their own bodies and their own psyches has a lot of trauma. So I just want to bring this up for a minute. There are a lot of people who are still dealing with a lot of trauma, a lot of childhood trauma, sometimes things that they don't even remember. Some of it's very subtle, but it's kind of in their energetic field. And what the conversation I was having yesterday is, if you, in some of your journeys, kind of blast yourself so far, but it doesn't give you any, it's an experience of surrender, yes, and you come back, but you're not gaining the tools along the way so that you can really go back in and get a real handle on your own consciousness, unwind some of the trauma, learn emotional intelligence as you're going so that you can really navigate your emotional terrain with like your own confidence, your own knowing that you can do that. The question that someone said to me is, how useful are huge journeys if you can't integrate them because you don't have the skills, or you don't have the tools, or you're not bringing back anything that's practically helpful to help you navigate your emotional terrain in your daily life. Now, I think everything has its place. I think every journey has its, so there's no right and wrong here. I'm just looking at effectiveness for kind of the evolution of the human being. And if I was saying that something that would be effective right now would be helping to come to a place where you're emotionally intelligent, or free from suffering, or thinking that something outside of you can cause your suffering, then all of these tools seem to be very helpful. And I'm kind of jumping backwards and forwards here, and I was listening to what you were saying before about having those journeys where you could maintain some level of awareness and then start to steer your ship in it. Seems to be very helpful for people long term, because it's very empowering, as opposed to just being completely mind shattering and then confusing for the next 5 years of your life as to what happened to you. So I'm sorry, I'm jumping a bit there, but just kind of listening and agreeing and dropping some thoughts that I've been having as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll give you a story example of this, which also, in a sense, kind of just throws out to everyone who's listening a practical tool. Which so many of these tools, it's not even complicated. It's literally, did you know you could do that? Like, so many of my conversations I have when I'm guiding people is just simply, did you know you could do that? No, I didn't know I could do that. Cool, do that next time. And then it shifts everything, because, and a lot of it is this feeling of, but I've been told I'm just supposed to surrender and let go and let it do whatever it does to me. And I'm not supposed to get in the way, or if I am getting in the way, that's my ego, and all these different types of things, which I maintain is a dogmatic kind of approach that's been put on for many, many different reasons. But I had a past client of mine who had a psilocybin journey where she was a hardcore activist, like super hardcore. She used to break into slaughterhouses and film, and like she was the real deal. And she had a psilocybin journey where the mushrooms brought her basically the experience of the entire world falling apart and what's happening on the planet, and like an Armageddon, end of the world, like this is what human beings are doing to the planet kind of scenario, right? And she broke down crying and was basically in this world for about 5 or 6 hours. Came out of it completely traumatized, because her interpretation of what was going on was that the plant medicine was showing her the true state of affairs. And so then she had this almost depression, she said, for months, because she was believing that this is what is, going on the planet. And I'm not saying it isn't, but it's not the only thing that's going on the planet, but that's what she walked away with. And when she met me and we were talking about this, and I just said, I brought her back to that journey. I had her go inside, and I said, imagine that you're there with the medicine. The medicine's showing you what looks like hell on the planet. And I said, what if in that moment you had the ability to come back to your breath and pause, back up a little bit, like lean back into yourself, get a little bit of objectivity, not so lost in the experience, kind of pull yourself together, and just ask one simple question to the mushrooms, to yourself. Is it possible that what I'm seeing is not the true state of affairs, but my belief about what I think is happening in the world? And she just paused. And I was like, is that possible that that's what was really happening? And she knew that that was the case. And she's like, holy shit, you're right. I wasn't being shown what's actually happening. I was being shown what I believe is happening. I said, yeah. But because you didn't have that simple tool of, hey, you can also ask some serious questions about what you're seeing. You don't have to take it blindly, that the medicine knows better and this is what's going on. Because it's speaking to us in metaphor. So she was seeing a metaphorical, tangible reflection of her own belief systems. But she didn't question that. And so she had hours of that traumatic experience. And I said, had you asked that question, the mushrooms might have completely shifted what it was showing you. Or she could have backed it up with the second question and said, mushroom spirit, if it's possible that what I'm seeing is a reflection of my beliefs and not the true state of affairs, can you show me what's on the other side of these beliefs? Can you show me what's really going on this planet? And what she was initially seeing might have literally just dissolved on itself as the mushrooms go, oh, you want to see the truth? Absolutely. Let's move all your shit aside and let me show you what's really happening on this planet. And God knows what she would have seen, but it might have been completely different.
Yeah. Yep. I'm just, I can totally relate to a lot of those experiences in the medicine where just one question can alter the whole experience that you're having, if you can find that to ask, or if somebody's there to maybe ask you, and how different it can be so quickly, which is some of the power of these tools.
Yeah.
It's probably taking a different route. There's just one other question I want to ask you before I talk a little bit more about how you bring mushrooms and cacao into your transformational coaching. I do want to know a little bit about that. But this was something we were talking about a while back. And that is that there are a lot of Westerners who are feeling more and more called to not journey with these medicines, but they also feel like they want to understand more, explore more, and facilitate ceremonies with different medicines, with ayahuasca. I mean, that includes me, come from the West, don't have a traditional upbringing in like a shamanic background. And, I was talking to you, and it could be a little bit of a controversial conversation, but something that I'm very passionate about is that if you do feel a calling to these medicines and to work with them, that it is okay to be a Westerner and to work with the medicine in a way that may not be traditional. And I'm of the belief that maybe not always working with the traditional format may be a part of the evolutionary process as well. And also looking at the speed of things happening in our world, it's not surprising to me that more and more people from the West are interested in understanding and working with these tools. And that, potentially taking 20 years to go and try and find a shaman or to find a teacher is just not effective or maybe necessary right now. The people are having access to information that they maybe didn't need to do 20 years of training in the jungle to access. So I just wanted to, it's an interesting conversation.
Yeah.
The young Western shaman, the young Western facilitator of these medicines. And I think there's something that is really beautiful about that and powerful, especially because I think we're starting to access multiple different areas of the world. And that maybe just traveling to Peru or traveling into the Mexican desert to do some of these things won't be the most accessible way. But if there are more Westerners waking up, wanting to work with the medicines, who are doing it in the way that feels aligned for them, we're going to be accessing more people with more tools and more understandings, and also breaking apart a little bit of the dogma of how things should be based on traditional ideas. I'm not saying not to have respect, by the way, at all. I think there is a level of respect, and I think there are certain things as we learn that you can integrate, but just talking into those different pathways to finding the medicines and then potentially facilitating them. What are your opinions?
There's a lot of places I could go with that, which is very fun. To start, I've yet to work with a plant ever that has told me I should not be working with it because I am a young white male, or anything like that, ever. I've heard rumors that people would say that, whether or not they're indigenous, whether or not they're this culture, that culture, whether or not it's other Westerners saying to other Westerners that they shouldn't be doing that. I've heard lots of human beings that hold that belief. I've never had a plant show up in one of my journeys and say, what the hell are you doing here? You know, you're not part of the lineage. Like, they don't seem to be concerned about it. So I trust the medicine itself. I'm not so concerned about what other people have to say about it. Again, like you said, you can be respectful and all these beautiful things. There's always room for that. But my relationship with the plant, my consciousness, and with my experience of the divine or my experience of life is mine and mine alone. And there's no one in this world that has a right to take that away from me. That's my opinion of it. And I don't care. It's also recognizing that people are people. No one's perfect. Everyone has their opinion. If I took, I see it all over the place in the spiritual community. I see it here in San Marcos. There's the Taoist monks down the road who say, you have to practice, Tai Chi for 20 years before you can start to experience the energy of blah, 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 blah. And you can't leave the lineage and all this stuff. And there's nothing wrong with that. But also, well, why are you telling me that? Is that because that's the path you took? So that's how it worked for you. So we tend to just kind of assume that that's how it has to work for everyone else, I think. And that's not necessarily the case. It needs to look this way. It has to be done this way, blah, blah, blah. Why? Because that's how you did it. Okay, awesome. I'm not you. I'm going to go do me. And then, work with people who resonate with me or don't work with anyone at all. And who cares? There's also a big difference between, like, I didn't decide I'm going to start working with the mushrooms because I want to do that, blah, blah, blah. I was just exploring mushrooms because I love them, because it's helped me change my life so much. And it was the mushrooms themselves that eventually, not that long ago, started coming into my journeys and sitting down and going, all right, you've been playing with us for quite a while now, and now we have a job offer for you. Would you like to take it or not? There's some things we want to create. They're going to be slightly controversial, and it's going to be us working with your consciousness. It's going to be your expression of it, And I said, well, I ignored it for a few times. And finally I said, okay. And my life changed very quickly after that. But, the name of the game in the end of the day is help the human consciousness wake up, help the collective heal, help the collective come into alignment, and bring the water. As one of my favorite coaches, Steve Chandler, says, bring the water. If you're in the desert and people are thirsty, bring the water. And right now we have a spiritual thirst all over the Western world, and it's time that we bring the water. There's not time in this particular moment in history, in this particular level of our evolution. There's not time for you to go sit in a mountain for the next 20 years and meditate in the cave because that's what the dudes in India told you you're supposed to do. Then what? You come out and the world's gone? Like, there's no time for any of that. My general opinion is that if you have a gift inside of you to bring this planet, if you have water inside of you, bring it. Stop asking the question, am I worthy enough to bring it? Am I good enough to bring it? Do people even want my water? Do people want to drink from my cup? If people are thirsty in the desert, you're not asking those questions. You're too busy carrying the water to people who need it. And getting out of this idea that, if you are a facilitator, or if you, whatever you're doing, plant medicine or otherwise, that you should be perfect, that all your inner work should be done, and, you should have reached this point. And dropping that and going, no, I'm totally flawed. I'm totally all of these things. And there's a gift inside of me. And people need it. And as I help other people heal, I'll heal myself. I'll learn more about it. I'll see more of where I need to clean my shit up, and I'll work on it, and I'll continue to grow and evolve. And, my practice for myself personally is always getting better as I heal, grow, and evolve. But had I held myself back years ago from helping anyone because I'm not worthy, or because I'm this, or because I come from this background, or whatever the story is, a lot of people that I've had a huge, beautiful opportunity to help wouldn't have been helped. And how is that a benefit to anyone?
Oh, exactly. I I really enjoy this part of the conversation because I know a lot of people out there are thinking about working with medicine. I'm having people from Western culture message me every day now saying, I'd really like to work with medicine. I'd really like to work with medicine. And, just speaking a little bit into my journey with that, I knew by my 4th journey with ayahuasca that I wanted to facilitate ayahuasca. By the 14th journey, not only did I feel ready, I knew that I could do it well. And it was a very interesting moment inside of myself because I was having that conversation with ayahuasca inside my own journeys. And she was saying there was a real resonance with, I know how to do this. I was checking my own consciousness. I could come from a place where I knew that I could keep people safe to the best of my ability, that my intentions were pretty clear. But then I was on the other side having people in the Western world saying, you're not a shaman. You're a white woman who hasn't had any proper training and you haven't done 100 ceremonies. And I actually had a very good friend of mine stand in my face and say, you do not get to serve medicine at this retreat, because I was helping facilitate at the time. And she said, you are not a shaman. It was like right in my face. And it was it was a beautiful, powerful moment. And I remember standing there and realizing that that was her reflection based on her understanding of what a shaman should be and what it should look like. And I remember taking this big, deep breath and anchoring so deep inside of myself and going, I don't really care about being a shaman. I know that this tool is powerful, that I can use it and that I can help people. And that's what I'm here to do. So I need to trust myself on that journey and the relationship that I have with the medicine. Because again, same thing. I've never had a medicine be like, what the hell are you doing here? Who do you think you are coming along and working with this? It was more like, are you ready? Are you ready? You can do this. You've got this. Don't worry about what anybody else is thinking. So it was that very personal experience for me of stopping giving a shit what anybody else was thinking about me. So that was a personal spiritual evolution of my own. I stopped giving a shit. I had to trust myself deeply. Everything you're saying, I looked at the world and was like, I don't have another 20 years to go and get training because our world is actually calling for our gifts now. And I was able to really, I did have good teachers and say, do you think I'm a dangerous practitioner? Do you think I need this? And I had some very good people and said, nope, you're good. Trust yourself and keep learning and evolving and staying curious to your own evolution. There's always, I think knowing that I'm perfectly imperfect and flawed as well. And then also with the medicine, as you might have found, realizing through that process that you are going to find your own way and you don't need to be like somebody else. It is a creative journey. So with what I do, I'm learning to sing, but I don't know the traditional songs. But I think I was in the ceremony with you. I started singing, but it was coming through my consciousness. And I remember being like, well, this is the way it's working through me because that's the tools and the expression that I have. And it was perfect for that situation. So just coming to understand your own relationship and your own trust with that is really, really important. And if anyone's listening and they want to follow that journey, then I say, go for it. Go for it. My shaman, beautiful soul that she is, when I said, will you train me with ayahuasca? Interestingly, she said no at first, not because she didn't want to train me, because she was like, I don't know how to do it. And I said, okay, let me ask a different question. If you did know, would you want to? And her answer was absolutely, because more people need access to as many healing tools as possible right now. So the more that we can empower each other and empower ourselves to share our gifts, no matter what mediums that's through, as long as you can keep yourself in check and maybe make sure you're doing the best to keep people's health and safety as a forefront, then go for it. These are beautiful tools. And sometimes, well, in my opinion, more powerful and more insightful than a lot of the other kind of hammer nail tools that we have in a Western medical society. So that's just my 2 cents on that. And I'm really, it's something I'm obviously very passionate about as well. So.
Well, I'll just say as well that one of the reasons why I loved working with you, and I'm so excited to continue working with you as a facilitator, is that I can feel so much of this. On the one hand, you've completely got it down. I mean, you hold the space so well. And on the other hand, I can feel the curiosity, the finding out, the discovering, like, alongside of, me. And it's so refreshing and it's so liberating to not be like, I've been doing this forever and I have my way. And also because it also kind of makes it as if there's a separation between well, I'm the, as Keith would say, the BFD, the big fucking deal healer. You know, I'm the shaman and I've got all of this and you don't, right? And that's a very different energy than just being like, well, I'll hold the space this time. We're all gods and goddesses. Let's get together and find out and like play. And it definitely gave me more freedom to be more of who I was, who I am, to experience you giving yourself that exact permission to do the same thing. And I think what's underneath a lot of that energy of, you know, you can't do this because blah, 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 and, you know, you're not that, you're not that. A lot of it on the belief system level is really just how we hold ourselves back based on our own beliefs and say, I'm not good enough yet. And I have a list of requirements that I need to become the most flexible, the most, you know, the best yoga teacher and the best, and work with all, I need to be all these different things before I can finally give myself permission to step forward and admit to myself that I'm amazing, because we all are, right? Before I allow myself to bring my gifts out, I have this whole list of requirements about it. And I haven't met them yet. So I've been working really hard on my spiritual journey, and it's very tough and it's very serious. And every single day I'm beating myself up in some way, shape, or form, you know, and holding myself down. And then I see Dylan or Holly or someone else, and they've barely been doing the work at all, but it seems as if, but they're showing up and doing it because they're not holding themselves back in the same way that I'm demanding myself to be held back. So what's the first thing you do then? If you're holding all those beliefs, is we go to our natural first tendency is always blame. And so we go, that person, I'm going to find all of their flaws, just like I do to myself, right? I'm going to find all of their flaws in the ways that they're not meeting the requirements. And then I'm going to point it out to them, because it's totally offensive to see someone who's decided to let themselves be free and let the divine flow through them. And when I haven't yet, it's painful. It brings up people's shit. It's a reflection. That's hard to handle. And we get over scrutinizing other people who are just trying to help other people.
That really comes down to, you know, we see reality as we are, not as it is, often, most of the time. So, you know, I don't know if that ever isn't true, but we do, for the majority of the human life, see reality as we are. It's a reflection of our consciousness and the filtration systems that we're looking through, as opposed to what's really going on. So there's a lot of projection happening until you begin to heal your own wounds and your own insecurities. And I do think a lot of people who are, it comes both ways. Those, they've always said this, those who are light and who are free, who are actually liberating themselves, really do bring up a lot of trauma in those who haven't allowed themselves to be like that yet. But it's a process of compassion. And, you know, if we have more tools that we can say, yes, but here are some tools, and here's a way that if you would like to figure out your own path to liberation and freedom, it's absolutely possible. And, you know, again, coming back to Earth Pulse, and I want to talk about your coaching, I think that's something that we're doing really well, is we're a statement of freedom. We're a statement of, this isn't orthodox. This isn't the way it should be done. We're children with an adult, you know, with evolving consciousness, who are saying we can play in multiple ways. There is no right or wrong way. And especially around this idea of shamanism or spirituality, again, there is no right or wrong way, but there is just being free. There is just being yourself. There is just having fun. And actually, the more that we drop all of the, not even drop, but kind of integrate and understand and process the pain that holds us back, it comes to this point where we can just be free and be ourselves and be creative. And that is, I feel, a lot of the space that we're trying to individually hold. Yeah, I'm still a mess, sure, in some ways, but mess is also perfect. It's a perfect creative expression. And, you know, just to share it, because it was so much fun and it's kind of the perfect moment to do it. I did have a moment in the journey that you were in, and I was standing, you know, there was the four of you in the center of the yard at like midnight, and every person was in a different space. They'd all left the ceremony circle, and they were all doing their own thing. They were having, I had somebody cartwheeling naked, I had somebody like giggling over here at a bug. And it was such a beautiful divine moment. And I'm banging the drum and I'm singing a non-traditional song. And I couldn't help but get the giggles, and I started to laugh, and I started to just laugh and laugh and laugh, holding the space, and I could hear everybody starting to laugh, because I had this momentary realization that in being myself and being completely free to just do what felt right in that way. I was looking at myself and I'm like, there's nothing about me that is a traditional shaman, but I know I've got the space. But in just being myself, everybody around me has chosen to be free. And I realized that everybody was just a reflection of the freedom that I was also letting myself be in that moment. And it was so beautiful, and it was so liberating, and it was so funny. And it was exactly like, my spirit was like, this is exactly the message and the sharing that, I would love people to feel. I want them to feel their own freedom, to do it in their own way, to realize they're God, they're the universe, and that their every expression is totally and utterly fine. We want to look after each other and make sure the physical body is safe. Yes, that's the wisdom, that's the intellect working, that's the making sure you're not being stupid. That absolutely comes into it. But outside of that, we're free, and people are free, and it is so beautiful. Like, it was the most beautiful experience of myself and of witnessing others as well. So, we don't get to share these stories often, but that was just a very beautiful moment.
That was one of
It's
my most favorite medicine journeys of all time, and it will remain that way forever. And there's a lot of that, and creating a space for people to explore, but have the freedom to explore and see what wants to come through is so important. I mean, part of my journey that night too is this feeling of my body and my being telling me, get off the meditation cushion. Because I do so much meditating, I'm so comfortable there, but I couldn't bring myself to sit in that circle, at all, because my being wasn't asking that of me. It's like, dude, you've been sitting like a stone cat for years now. Like, and in that particular journey, just wasn't about that. It was like, get up and move and dance and play and laugh like a madman and do all the things, and it's such a blessing to be in a space with a space holder who just sees that and sees the beauty of it, and not trying to change it or make it look a certain way or be a certain thing, because good luck anyways.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm literally crying here because it's so funny, but sitting on the meditation cushion, my understanding is that's the ceremony begins when that's done. That's your practice to calm the mind or tame the mind so that you have access to your own freedom. And then once you realize, what did Buddha do after he realized? He got up and he went back to work. He went back to doing what, he didn't stay sitting in meditation forever. Our liberation isn't, you can sit in meditation, but once you realize you're free, get up and go be yourself. Dance, play, work, do something that's drawing, out of compassion. But, I think the idea that someone's sitting there peacefully in meditation, you sometimes, again, talking about end goals, it's like, oh, that's the end goal. But that's not the end goal at all. That's your practice pad. That is your practice pad, so that you can just be yourself. And if that's your highest joy to sit like that, then fine. But maybe your highest joy is to cartwheel naked too, or to paint, or to sit with somebody who's going through a hard time, because you can become a compassionate ear after that period. So this has been such an amazing conversation. I know we could jam for forever, going down rabbit holes of the human journey of self-discovery and exploration using multiple tools. It is such a joy to always talk with you. I would love just to hear a little bit about your transformational coaching program and how you're bringing the psilocybin into your transformational coaching program. I haven't actually heard a lot about this, but I know you're doing it, and it sounds absolutely phenomenal. Could you just share a little bit about that, and maybe how people could find you or reach out to you? Obviously we're going to be running our own retreats with the whole crew as soon as we can. We'll all be together, working together next to each other in a physical location. But outside of that, we do still have our own offerings. And so I'd love to hear about yours, and also how people can find you.
Awesome. So yes, before I launch into that, I'll add in one last note, which ties in, I think, a lot of what we're saying. And it talks a lot about how I run my practice anyways, which is just that we are going to have to collectively start to come to terms with the fact that the human consciousness planetarily is changing and evolving more rapidly than it ever has. And that means that the rules are all rewriting themselves. It also means that what is possible for us as individuals is completely transforming. If technology is evolving at a ridiculously rapid rate, we can assume spirituality is exactly following the trajectory, because the technology is a reflection of our consciousness. So it's showing us in many, many ways how we're evolving so quickly. And the game of the new paradigm is no longer about how long does it take me to learn all the skills, 5 years, 20 years, 30 years. It's not about that anymore. It's about how long will you take as an individual to get yourself out of the way, to let who you actually are as the universe in a human form move through you, step through. And the amount of time that takes you to learn how to get out of the way and let something greater flow through your vessel, your being, that's how long it will take. And a lot of the contemporary teachers, Matt Kahn, Keith talks a lot about that. That's a lot of what my work is about, okay, you're the divine. We just need to get what you're not out of the way and then start to access all of your potential. And many, many people are starting to do this, which is also why in the Western world, when we have access to YouTube and spiritual teachers all over the world and every single plant medicine, and the wisdom that we now have at our fingertips is just absolutely insane. And it's creating a much wider door where people are picking up and learning things much, 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 much quicker than they used to. And that's a very good thing. And if you're looking at, who's a good teacher or a bad teacher, one of the things that I kind of use to help me discern is this teacher okay with the fact that if I'm dedicated, I will go beyond them much quicker than they took to get there? Can they handle that? Because that's what's happening on this planet right now. So if the teacher can't handle it, then they're stuck in the past and they're stuck in dogma. And that personally for me is not my teacher. Doesn't mean I can't learn something from them, but they're not my teacher. Keith, who's in his late 60s, he does not hold on to the idea of I'm the top, shaman. And you'll never get there because I've been doing this it's going to take you 20 years. He says, and I say, you will get there 10 times faster than I will because we're evolving on top of each other. Why wouldn't you? And the collective vibration's raising. So it's easier to get shit that was, really stretched for those higher vibrational teachings before, but now they're all over the place, low-hanging fruit. So as Keith says, you're going to go beyond me. You already have. And the people I teach go beyond me very, very quickly in my coaching program. I'm watching younger people sometimes. When I get these young 18-year-olds or whatever, and I'm thinking, fuck, in 3 months, they're going to accomplish what it took me 10 years to accomplish. If I'm in my, oh, that's a bad thing, whatever. But really, it's like, are you awesome? That's amazing. She'll be ready in a year. We need her ready in a year. That's incredible. Imagine the children who are going to come in on this planet who already have it. We're clearing out the way for the evolution of consciousness to just continue accelerating. And, we got to humble ourselves to just understand you're all going to bypass me. You're going to go, awesome. If I can accept that, then I can be your teacher, and I'll make it easier for you by providing you everything I've cultivated. Congratulations, you don't have to do 10 years of this shit. I'll give you the best that I've got, and you can move right along. And it's a beautiful thing.
I love that. It's taken me about 8 or 9 years of like hardcore exploring, putting myself through some really shitty things that took a long time to learn. And now you can accelerate it. I know I'm watching people, the same thing, learn things in a day that it took me a year and a half to try and do, because I've always said I'm on the slow path. I really do feel like I'm on the slow path, and we are speeding up, and people are going to have access to information and wisdom and tools within inside themselves faster and faster and faster and faster and faster. And it's necessary right now. It's necessary because if we don't evolve, have a look at the planet. Well, if we don't, actually, I'm going to put that a different way. If we don't evolve, then we'll just be stuck living in our own reality of an unevolved society. Whereas if you would like to experience a evolving society, one that is whatever your idea or whatever you're feeling, however far you can go in your evolution or your understanding of how beautiful it can become, you can step into that. You can transform everything, and you can have access to doing things that you had no idea in your old, like, dogmatic ideas that you could actually do. So I'm seeing people access now abilities that they had no idea they can do. They can draw where they didn't know they could draw. They can sing when they didn't know that they could sing. Their bodies are healing. We're just touching the surface on this conversation. And I feel that a lot of what we're going to be seeing and doing over the years for those people who are actually choosing to evolve or finding that pathway is we're going to be finding ways to heal our bodies at a far greater rate. We're going to be finding ways to interact with the environment at a rate that's actually going to help nurture the environment rather than destroy it. We're going to find ways of redefining what love is. I think we're only hardly even touching on what the energy of love is and what it can do when we start to use it consciously. And I, not even begun to understand the power and the capacity of the human being. We're literally scraping at the surface right now. So if you're excited now, you can't even imagine what's coming. This is my feeling anyway. We can't even imagine it. Even when you access, and Keith showed me this, like the most beautiful idea of what you think life could be, it still goes further than that. That's still just the beginning. It goes beyond any idea that you could have, but we still need to do the groundwork, decide to lock ourselves into our rocket ship and start to evolve. We will evolve. I think everybody will evolve. It's just the speed at which you do it. You have control over that. Everyone's going to evolve eventually. It's just whether you're kicking and screaming with somebody pulling you along because that's the way the energy is going and it's much more painful, or if you lock in and make a conscious choice to actually speed up. And then, yeah, absolutely be excited about the fact that those coming in who are younger than us or who are just coming in now are probably going to do it a hell of a lot faster, because that's the energy on our planet right now. And the children who are being born into this energy are going to have a higher level of consciousness than us, which is exciting. And if we get out of competition, or if we get out of this idea of being the big fucking deal that you're talking about, then they will also help us to continue evolving. And that is exciting. But again, so much of what we teach, if you think you're separate, then you'll be in competition. But when you realize that actually we're all the leaves of one tree, when other people evolve and move faster, guess what? It's helping you too. So thank you so much. Let's give everything we've got to everybody so they can evolve faster, because it's all helping the whole collective. So very exciting. And if there's anything else you want to share, now it's time.
Real quick. All right. About how to work with me. Well, always open for one-on-one clients. If someone's out there and they just want to have a personal guide, me pour my heart, body, and soul into supporting you as an individual, you can reach out to me on my website. The link is already in the text here, and schedule a one-on-one session with me, and we'll just meet like this, and we'll have a 90-minute free session, and we'll go from there. There's that, which I absolutely love. And then also I created a program that is about to start again in the beginning of May. It's called Exploring Mushrooms, Psychedelic Training for the Modern World. And it's a 3-month group coaching program where I show you all the best tools that I've acquired on how to navigate your psychedelic experience from the inside out, encouraging solo blindfolded explorations, and having the skills and the confidence to be able to go inside and have all of those tools that we've been talking about to radically expand and deepen what's possible, both for creativity, imagination, what's possible for yourself and your life, but also your deep healing and getting access to the deepest levels of healing and integration at the same time. So the way the course works is every single week you get a video and a guided recorded meditation that is a consciousness training that we practice in meditation throughout the week. And then once a week as a group, we meet live for group coaching. You can ask questions. If you're taking medicine, we can integrate it together, all that good kind of stuff. And then the tools continuously build on themselves for 3 months, starting from very solid foundational work and going all the way into accessing some super crazy levels of creative artistic potential inside the medicine journey.
I would recommend, if you want to work with mushrooms or you want to transform your life from the inside out, I couldn't recommend Dylan highly enough. You're passionate. You are dedicated to your art. I've got to see Dylan really, every time I see Dylan, he is working on his art. He's interested in his process. He's working on himself. He is completely dedicated, aligned, and cares about people, which is really important. And you're unorthodox, and you're free, and you're yourself. And I've seen you in action, and I've seen how much you're willing to support and look after people. So if anybody does want to explore themselves, especially working with psilocybin, go look up Dylan. He's an amazing soul, and we've hardly even touched on his capacity as a space holder and a friend. I think that's what it really comes down to. I think some of the best facilitators are just good friends who are able to be there with you as you navigate looking for your own tools inside of yourself. So thank you so much for everything that you are. Thank you for just being yourself and bringing a lot of joy and a lot of fun and a lot of sincerity to the planet. Your work is incredibly necessary right now. I have no doubt that anybody who comes across your path will be touched, just like I have been. And I cannot wait until we get to reunite personally and physically, even though we're all connected anyway. And if anybody has any questions after watching this in the future that they want to drop, you're welcome to drop them in the links below. Dylan or myself can answer them. You can reach out to Dylan personally. You can reach out to any of the Earth Pulse tribe. We've got a really cool tribe coming from all around the world with multiple different skills and understandings. So thank you all so much for joining us. And we will see you.
Thank you, Ali.
You're so
Yes.
welcome.
Thank you, Earth Pulse. Thank you, everyone who's listening. And I'll see you in Mexico. Come play with us. Yeah.
Yay.
So much more fun to be had.
Yay. Bye.